Hello, everyone. My name is Enki, and welcome to the Failing Upward podcast with Enki. I am your host, Enki at the True Trap. I've decided to start making a podcast, and the premise of this podcast is that it's going to be an experimental podcast in self-discovery. I've been wanting to make a podcast for many years, actually, but I've never quite been sure what I want to make my podcast about, or even how I wanted to make a podcast. I've been told that podcast needs a central theme or ideas or something, and I have struggled with that for a very long time. So I've decided that I'm going to do something experimental and make a podcast where I am just throwing random nonsense at the wall and seeing what sticks. Seeing what people like to listen to, see what people want me to talk about, really just anything. It's just going to be whatever I can think of, or I'm suggested, or it could be current events. It could be anything, but I'm throwing it at the wall until I have an idea. Now, for those who know me from other platforms, I am Miko Bootstraps on Twitch. But since I didn't really want that character attached to the podcast, as this is going to be more raw, unfiltered opinions of my own, that being the creator behind Miko. But I also thought it'd be kind of interesting to keep with the VTuber theme and keep that well within character. Thus, I decided to be a VTuber podcaster. So you both have the listen to ability of the podcast while also having a cute little VTuber to watch. I think that's quite fun. Don't you? Of course, there's other ideas that also came into this as well. The first just being the novelty of a VTuber podcaster. I've looked into it. I didn't quite find any. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments if I am. But I couldn't find any. I found podcasts about VTubers or had VTubers being interviewed in them, but I didn't find podcasts hosted by a VTuber. So if there are any, I'm interested, but I haven't found any. So do your thing if you know any. I'd like to know. I'd like to watch and see what they're up to. I think that'd be kind of fun. That all aside, what will my podcast be? Why should you listen to my podcast? The simple answer being, it's going to be whatever I feel like. The long answer being, it's going to be an unfiltered poke at my brain. This is going to be a series of self-discovery, experimentation, and really kind of giving a raw insider as an inside look to who I am. Well, of course, staying behind the anonymous nature of being a VTuber, of course. All things considered, the internet still requires people to really be anonymous. I find it really brave and endearing and fascinating that there are people out there who will just willingly put their face out there, who will put their name out there. Joe Rogan, Adam Ragusea, for example, being two that I'm very familiar with. I listen to a lot of Adam Ragusea podcasts, especially when my wife and I are going long distance driving. For example, when we drove from our house to Colorado, or when we went up to Massachusetts to see my family back in Christmas, or last winter, I should say. So I'm familiar with the idea of podcasts, and I'm very familiar with how they're done. Of course, that familiarity does not always translate to doing so, which is why I've decided to start doing this. The other reason why I decided to start doing this is I want to make YouTube content as well. I have a lot of things I want to put out there, but I have a very difficult time articulating my words and writing them down. I am both autistic and dyslexic, so reading a script or even writing a script is extra challenging. I often sound very stiff and robotic when I try to read, or in many cases I stumble over my words a lot, and that makes me very frustrated when trying to do it. So I thought another way of doing that would be to also make a podcast, something I can listen back to, but also something I can put out there where I can get feedback on. Something where I can throw out an idea and get people who can do their own input. Maybe people can explain how, maybe I'm off, or maybe what points they liked, or what things I could update on, or detail, or refresh, or all kinds of ideas. I can do that through a podcast because I'm throwing out these unfiltered thoughts. These are as they're coming to me. Maybe I'll have some notes here and there, but I'm not going to be writing a full-blown script. I'm not going to be doing a lot of fact-checking, for example. There will be some fact-checking here and there, obviously, especially if it's something that I really want to make sure I get accurate, but for the most part, it's going to be opinion. I want to preface this that it will be my opinion, because I don't want people looking at me as a reference or a source for anything, okay? Okay, cool, awesome. Glad we got that aside. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, though. But I do have some ideas that I want to get out there. A good example of something I want to talk about. So this is going to be both an example of what I want to talk about in my podcast, as well as something I just want to get out there because I need it out there. This is the concept. Have you ever played the game Animal Crossing New Leaf for the 3DS? And one of the cool features about it is this island that you can go to. The thing is that every time somebody goes to that island, a lot of people just cut down all the trees and leave 4 stumps. This allows you to exploit the spawning algorithm to just spawn beetles. Fuck tons of beetles. So many beetles. You can basically buy everything. With that idea, my friends and I used to call that Beetle Island, because that's all you did with it. And whenever you started the game, you set up a Beetle Island. Got a new save file? Set up a Beetle Island. Your friend about to start a new save file? Tell them about Beetle Island. Beetle Island became this phrase that we would use. And from there, we also started translating it into other games. For example, if you're starting up a world in Minecraft, what is the first thing so many people do in long-term worlds? Villager trading halls. That's a Beetle Island. Why is it a Beetle Island? Because it's not fun, but it's so game-breaking and so exploitable and so easy to do that all it is a time sink and an immediate 100% guaranteed payback. You are guaranteed to be able to pay that off. All the time that you put into it, you are just guaranteed to get your investment back in triplicate. That is a Beetle Island. It's an exploitable game feature that takes the game itself and finds an oversight and then uses it to or more specifically, finds an oversight that is crazy, stupid, easy to do. And there's no excuse to not do it. Why would you not make a Beetle Island? Why would you not make a villager trading hall? Why would you not do these things? Because if you don't do them, you're just going to be spending more time doing something else. Or you can spend like 2 or 3 hours and make a villager trading hall. So it's like 3 weeks, 3 hours. The same thing with Animal Crossing. Why would you not make a Beetle Island? Beetle Island is simple. It takes like an hour at best of work if you're really slow, and maybe 20 minutes if you're really fast. But from there, the payoff is immediate. You pretty much can pay off your entire house in like a few days. It's ridiculous. Why would you not do it? That is the concept of the Beetle Island. I've been meaning to make a video about that because I'd like to get this out into the zeitgeist. I want people to understand what a Beetle Island is and how to spot it. I also want developers to understand what a Beetle Island is and look out for it. Because Beetle Islands are not fun, but they are efficient and they are logical and they make sense. Because you should make a Beetle Island if you can. But as a developer, you should not want a Beetle Island. Minecraft had a previous Beetle Island with the zero-tick farms. It was so easy to set one up, and the payoff was immediate. If you had a bamboo one, you pretty much just had perfect unlimited fuel. Well, by perfect, I mean it sucked ass, but it was cheap, free, easy, fast. Why would you not make a zero-tick farm with bamboo and just put it into your super smelter? That's Beetle Island. Of course, they removed zero-tick, and now more creative farms had to be created as a result of doing so. That is a great example of dealing with a beetle farm. Animal Crossing New Horizon also had a wonderful example of dealing with beetle farm, or with a beetle island, I should say. They had, of course, Tarantula and Scorpion Islands, or you can make your own Tarantula and Scorpion Island. Why? How could you get away with this? Well, simultaneously have a fun feature? Well, every island just died when you left it. Every island was newly generated every time you went. Was generated when you went there. I put that, I want to backpedal. The reason why I put that in quotes is because honestly it was the same pattern a lot. So it wasn't perfect. It's a bit old, but still. But every time you went to an island, you had a different experience. But if you had a good island for, say, tarantulas, like a bamboo one, you could just cut down all the bamboo and just farm tarantulas or scorpions, depending on the time of year. Or they really paid you off if you were patient enough and gave you an island that exclusively only spawned those 2 spawns. So Nintendo recognized the benefits of having a beetle island while simultaneously recognizing how to integrate it into the gameplay without fully removing it, but also not fully keeping it. That is a good way of dealing with it. I hope more developers really consider that stuff when they look at their games. And also look for the concept of a beetle island. Because when it comes down to a Beetle Island, a lot of it's just easy things that are just too much common sense. If you look at the verse seeker of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, there was these two trainers you can double battle with, and you could actually just reset their battles. They're on like one of the bridges, and if you had an amulet coin, you pretty much were just guaranteed a ton of money. Now, I've noticed that Nintendo has basically tried to avoid doing that within later versions of Pokemon game by effectively just removing remodeling Pokemon, which is a great example of how not to address a Beetle Island. Removing a feature and then not replacing it with anything is a great example of how not to do a Beetle Island, or should I say how not to correct a Beetle Island. Though there are rights and wrong ways. You can't wholeheartedly remove a Beetle Island once it's been found, but you also cannot allow it to continue once it's found. Unless it's like Zero Tick in Minecraft, or it was so broken that there was no reason to keep it. There was no benefit keeping it, and there was no way to replace it outside of just encouraging people to make more efficient farms. Minecraft is what it is. I personally thought it was fine because bamboo already grows ridiculously fast anyways. It really didn't matter. I also don't use bamboo as a fuel source, so maybe that's just me. Maybe there's someone out there right now still pissed off about it. If you're listening to this, your feelings are valid, but I'm not that concerned. I hope you understand. It's nothing personal. So yeah, that's kind of the thing I'd like to talk about. This is like ideas that I have for videos as well. I'd like to get those out there so I can get feedback on them. But I can't really write a script, or at least not yet. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not really practiced enough. I'm not really prepared enough to do it. It's not something I'm used to. Maybe I could hire a scriptwriter. I don't know, but I don't have money for that. I'm doing this all myself. Do note the biggest caveat to all of this is I am doing this all myself. This is just me. I hit my mic. I'm sorry. But this is just me. I am doing all of my production myself. So it comes with the cost of my own limitations. It's the same thing with my own voice. Maybe the real limitation to my voice is that it's kind of robotic because I'm autistic. Or maybe it's just anxiety. Maybe putting something out there will help me work through that anxiety, that speaking anxiety to the public. Maybe that's all I actually need. I actually don't know. So that's why I'm doing this podcast, to fail upwards. Because I'm hoping through this podcast, through this experiment, through this process of failing upwards, I will be able to actually think of something and accomplish something and put something out there that is more my speed. Or more specifically, I shouldn't say my speed, will help me understand what I need to do, what kind of pitfalls I need to work through, what kind of ways I can articulate, what kind of ways that I can work on how I speak, and how I can learn how to read and speak at the same time. Let me rephrase that. Learn how to read a script. I'm going to probably start writing stuff down. This is unscripted. I will note that. I have no notes. All I have is my gaming chair and my desk and microphone and laptop. That's it. I don't have any notes in front of me right now, so if this doesn't make much sense, blame me for it. You came here for that. That said, I do also have a lot of thoughts on current events. And oftentimes, I find myself struggling to talk about current events in text form. I think people misinterpret a lot of the ways I talk because I tend to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? I tend to be very open and vocal and very, very unfiltered when I do talk in text. So some people can see that as antagonistic. They can see that as blunt or even mean-spirited. And I'm not trying to be. But at the same time, I have strong opinions, or in many cases, I just want to have people understand that there's a nuance to different issues. Maybe I've noted a nuance that I want to be put out there. Maybe I've noticed something that people haven't noticed about a current issue. But as a result, because I'm going against the current narrative, people assume malice out of me. And that's not very fun, actually, because then I had to spend time justifying that I'm not committing malice, but I'm just bringing in a different perspective to the topic. So I'd like to do this podcast as well, so that way I can have that idea of being able to have my voice also articulate what I mean. and I can also give the nuanced takes that I want. In a sense, it will force you, yes, force, or, okay, maybe I shouldn't use the word force. It will ask of you to sit down and listen to me. One, because this is not a back and forth. This is a podcast. You're listening to me. You're here to do that. That's what I hope at least you're here for. You can also be here for whatever the reason. You can look at my cute little tummy. You got that. I guess you can come here for my cute tummy. It is very cute. But it allows me to be able to explain my topics, my thoughts, and what I actually want to say in a way that is, how to put it, I guess you can say not so timely. When you're having a discussion on current events, people expect very timely responses. They expect you to kind of have something almost fully fleshed out and countering to whatever they're saying. You see this a lot when it comes down to a really hot button issue. A good example is one that I've been always in, which is the topic of traps being quote-unquote transphobic. I don't think it is, which is why I call myself a true trap. And now I call myself that because I identify with the idea that you don't know whether I'm male or female, but you do know that that there's something about me that's attractive, or you do know that there's something about me that walks the line between the two. There's something uncanny about who I am. And in that case, that is what it makes the essence of a trap. Because whatever you feel about me or however you perceive me is probably wrong, or it could be right. You actually don't know. And I deliberately want to keep it that way. And I think that's what trap stands for. When you look at a trap character, you think, could that be a girl? Could that be a boy? Is that a trans girl? Is it non-binary? What are they? But you don't know. In many cases, they'll tell you they're a boy, but you really don't know. And that's just a fact. Now, as for if it's transphobic or not, I say the answer depends on context. That is where I think people have the pitfalls. They don't consider context first. They consider the gut reaction that they have. They consider the offensive connotation. They go with the rhetoric, the talking points. They bring up all kinds of nonsense. They bring up how it was used for this or how it was used for that. But here's my personal take on it. It is only transphobic if it is directed at someone who did not consent to it. If their identity is not that thing, that being trap, then yes, it's offensive. It's a slur. It's whatever you want to call it. But the same could be said about a lot of things. If I called you a spoon aggressively enough, you would probably get annoyed by it. Could you call it a slur? I don't know. I'm not that much of a pedant. But you can at least say that you've been offended by it, or that you've been annoyed by it. Any word used in the wrong connotation can be a problem. That's something I don't think is considered enough in this conversation, because nuance has to be removed. Especially when you're arguing on things like Twitter, where you have a text limit, which demands that you take away the nuance. Instead of having a full conversation where you actually think through on what you want to say, you have to do it immediately, especially with the provocation of the fact that people tend to just block each other or dogpile on each other or talk over each other, and they don't let the other person speak, think, or feel about what they want to do. They just want a reaction as immediate as possible. And as a result, you get rhetoric, you get narratives, you get slogans. Trap is transphobic. It's a narrative, it's a slogan, but it's not a fact. Because two things I will have to say, it doesn't have to be about trans women, and it's not about trans women. If you think it is, then you're not really thinking it through. You're not. A similar argument has been made about femboys, and in other gender nonconforming terms as well, like tomboy. I think the idea that these are quote-unquote transphobic really takes away from gender nonconformity as a whole, and it damages identities. It damages how people see themselves. If somebody identifies with something because it describes who they are, then it is who they are. And the idea of saying, whoa, you can't do that, that's upsetting to me, stop that. Well, why? If it's only upsetting to you because you have some strange narrative, then that sounds like a personal problem. I'm sorry. Maybe it'd be best to also talk to each other like real people. I know that sounds funny coming from a VTuber, but as said before, I like the idea of having this gimmick, so to speak. It also keeps me more anonymous. I don't really care to have people not... I don't think that it's necessary to put myself out there in the way that people can recognize me. I don't think it benefits me, and I don't think it benefits anybody else. I'm a very private person to begin with. Now, I could have done this with Miko, for example. My other VTuber model, in fact, I can do a good demonstration of that. 1 second. If for those who are watching, Now, yeah, I could have used this model, which is my more popular model, but I actually like to use this one in more character, actual character, like for my streams and soon-to-be content. And in a sense, I kind of want this character's persona and what image they have to be separate. It's kind of similar to the idea of having a character on TV and wanting to be separate from that, I guess you can say. As I was saying, so I hope that makes sense to anybody who is familiar with me. And to those who are not familiar with me, you can find my streams on Twitch. You can find my streams on Twitch at, I think it's Miko the Catboy. I don't know why I forgot that. Actually, I'm going to go check that now. I don't know why I forgot if it's Miko the Catboy or something else. Give me 1 second. Yes. You can find me at Miko the Catboy. That is what you can find me on Twitch, and you can watch Miko's my streams over there on Twitch if you're interested. I hope you are. I have some fun stuff over there. We play all kinds of games and we do all kinds of nonsense. So I hope you enjoy that if you do choose to watch it. That said, I want the characters to be separate. Admittedly, this isn't necessarily a character. It is a self-insert. This is how I kind of personify myself as the real person behind the camera, while still simultaneously still being a VTuber. Because of course, it stays within the theme of the content I already create. It's branding thing. Makes sense? I hope it does. If it doesn't make sense, well, you're probably not, you probably got to really think about it for a sec. I don't know. I hope it makes sense. I digress. I'm not trying to insult anyone. That said, I hope this is kind of an idea as to what I actually plan on putting out there. Normally, I'm a lot more funny. I try to make jokes, but I'm not sure what kind of jokes I can make in this. I guess you'd say the biggest joke is that, is my English. Yeah, I can do English. I can speak English. I digress. That said, there's a lot I actually want to put out. I'm going to probably be splicing in some clips from Minecraft or any other game that I'm going to be playing. This is more so just because I think the idea would be kind of fun. It also can help break up the fact that I'm going to be doing a lot of these at night where my lighting isn't the best. So my VTuber model might not sync all the time. And, well, I think it'd just be kind of fun to throw in some footage of stuff that I'm doing. I think you kind of break up the monotony of it all as well, if I were to be honest. I think it breaks up the monotony. I really do. Now, as for other things, to address one simple question, now to wrap this all up, as for the ideas that I plan on doing, well, actually, scratch that. To wrap this all up, I do have one question. What should my last name be? My first name is Enki. My title is True Trap. But I don't have a last name. Somebody suggested D's, as in Enki D's nuts. But I don't think that's gonna fly very well, to be honest. It's funny. It's quite a name, but I don't think it's gonna work. So don't suggest that. I'm not gonna take it if you do suggest it. You can make the comment with it if you want, but still. I'm not going to take it if you do suggest it, but if you do have a nickname, leave it in the comments below. If you're listening to us on another platform where that doesn't have comments, you can go to my YouTube at Marshall E. Valentine, and you can leave it on the comments for this video. You can do it however you want. Anyways, I do hope you like, comment, subscribe. I plan on making more of these. I also plan on making more content. I also have streams that are coming up in the future, so if you're interested in following those, you do have my Twitch. As I said before, it is Miko the Catboy. I hope this was something. I hope you're looking forward to whatever I plan on doing with this. This is highly experimental. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with it. Maybe we'll have some interviews. Maybe we'll have some nonsense says about current events. I don't know. This is a prelude to another stream. Or not stream. This is a prelude to a future podcast when I have a more fleshed out idea as to what I want to do in the future. Hence the reason why it's called Failing Upwards. Because the expectation is I'm going to be failing a lot. I know I said I was going to wrap it up. I guess I'm just not going to wrap it up. That sometimes happens. The ideas keep flowing. But yes, the idea of failing upwards. This was a concept my wife brought up to me when watching, I think it was Shiga Tensei, or Jobless Reincarnation. I probably pronounced that wrong. Do apologize. I have a hard time sometimes with pronouncing that one. But at the whole concept of failing upwards, that being like you have stumblings and you have failures, but somehow or other you successfully execute a plan out of them. You don't succeed. You just don't fail. You just don't fall down when you fail. You fall upwards. And that's what I want to do with these podcasts. I want to fail upwards. I want whatever my failures are to be a lesson for the next one. If one doesn't work and one doesn't stick, then maybe I just don't do that one again. Or maybe I rework it. Maybe I try again. Maybe I say, okay, this one didn't work this time. What if I do this? And then I try and get feedback. I try to work with people. I try to do what I can to fail up. And when I'm more confident to what I want to do, I put it aside to the next future podcast. Because I do have a podcast that I plan on doing. I have a title for it and everything. But I'm not going to commit to it yet because the title is too good and I'm too confident in it. And I don't want to commit an experimental podcast to a title that I really like, if that makes sense. I like the idea that this is a failing upwards project, that the expectation is this will not succeed. And that's not a bad thing. Because I've been doing this for too many years. I've been trying so hard to want to make something and just not committing because I don't know how to succeed. And then the realization hit me. To succeed, you still need to fail. Jake the dog once said, sucking at something is the first step of being sort of good at something. I love that phrase. You gotta suck at something first. You're gonna be terrible first. But it is the first step of being good. To walk, you first need to learn how to crawl. To crawl, you first need to learn how to roll. In this essence, this is me learning how to roll. I first need to send out a shitty podcast where it is a nonsensical ramble of just some ideas that I'm throwing at the wall and seeing what I think is good. And if it's not good, maybe I take it down, maybe I don't. Who knows? I don't. But that's the first step in learning how to know what you're doing, is first being awful at it. And I hope that's something you'd take away from this. This is a designed failure. It is intended to fail from the get-go, and that's fine, because the success comes from the failures. You learn to succeed from your failures. You learn to succeed from what didn't work. That is how you should do. I've been holding myself back for years as a perfectionist. I haven't published any videos because I've been holding back on it. I haven't published a podcast because I've been holding back on it. And it's about time I break that cycle. This is me breaking the cycle and accepting that the first thing I'm going to do is suck at it. And that's awesome. I'm very proud of myself, actually. And I'm hoping that if you're listening to this and you've made it this far, that's worth a subscribe and a like. Or at least a comment to call me a dumbass. Or asking for feet pic. Whatever you want. I don't care. Anyways, you're not going to get feed pic. Thanks for showing up to the Failing Upwards podcast. I am your host, Enki the True Trap. I hope you see you next time. I don't know what the schedule is going to be yet. I don't know what it's going to be. But I damn well know one thing. I'm going to get a better background. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for showing up.